I want to push my point about the tactical benefits of pushing for a Clinton landslide over a third-party candidate on the left. Liberal Democrats are not going to be granted an audience in a Clinton administration. They're not. They will be completely ignored, marginalized. Um, as I've pointed out a few times, I believe that the Clinton administration will, in policy and substance, most resemble the Bush administration. And it's going to, not only will they not be granted an audience, but she will treat them with contempt, right? They will be completely ignored, and she will take pleasure in poking sticks in their eyes, kind of thing. She hates liberals. So, I mean, that might seem like it doesn't make any sense to support her, except that the bigger the majority, the more room the party has to fracture. Okay, if you have a really, really big Democrat majority, then the chances that there's enough of them to break away into a liberal faction increases. It's just you're just playing with probabilities, right? The more Democrats there are, the more liberal Democrats there are, right? And so the bigger the majority, the bigger the possible fraction wing. All right. The best scenario here in this very dour circumstance is to try and work towards a situation where Clinton's opposition is on the left. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a situation where you have Clinton governing on the moderate to at points extreme right, and her opposition being crazy people. And so the whole discourse exists outside the realm of discourse, or outside the realm of reasonable discourse. I want to push my point here. Liberal Democrats are not going to be granted an audience in a Clinton administration. So the bigger the majority, the more room the party has to fracture. The best scenario here in this very dour circumstance is to try and work towards a situation where Clinton's opposition is on the left. Otherwise, what we're going to end up is a scenario, okay, where you have Clinton governing on the moderate to extreme right, and the opposition being outside of the realm of discourse, or outside of the realm of reasonable discourse. And so the whole narrative ends up in, la la land. That's what needs to be prevented, okay? One way or the other, you're going to end up with an unacceptable executive, neither of these options are even reasonable, right? From any perspective. They're both insane. It's, you pick what type of craziness you want. If you're a responsible voter, what you need to be focusing on right now is what is the best way to oppose whatever crazy person gets elected. If Trump somehow manages to win and you end up with a Republican Congress and there is no opposition, or the opposition comes from there won't be opposition on a lot of stuff like his tax policies, right? You might see some opposition on some of his immigration policies, or you might see some opposition on his war policies. Okay, either way, that's an even. I don't even want to. I didn't think about that scenario. I'm assuming that Clinton wins. I think that there's no. Do you want the opposition to Clinton to be on the crazy, the loony right, or do you want to try to create a liberal party on the left to oppose her, right? Because she's going to govern on the right, and she's going to govern very far on the right. So how do we create a situation where the people that are arguing against her are to her left. Like I say, it's just a question of playing probabilities. The more Democrats that you elect, the more liberal Democrats there will be, and the higher the chances are that you can create a meaningful movement to the left of the executive branch. That's not going to happen by voting for Jill Stein. But there is a chance. It's not, like I say, it's going to require some effort. But there is a chance that it can happen if the caucus grows large enough to the size that the progressive wing challenges what's left of the Republicans in Congress. That's the best scenario that the left can hope for right now, is to get a situation where there's some, dissenting Democrats on the left of the party that have more influence than the Republicans on the other side of the aisle. Or at least should, because Clinton is a Democrat, not a Republican, right? And if it can get big enough, if you can create a new party out of that, if you can force Clinton to have to rely on the Republicans to pass budgets, and she will, right? And that will give, the liberal wing of the Democratic Party an excuse to fracture and go off. Now, there's lots and lots of hypotheticals here. Are they going to want to do that? But a big enough majority at least makes it possible. And I do think that there are going to be people in the Democratic Party that may actually desire that, right? What I'm suggesting here is that the left wants to try and engineer a situation where the Democrats and Republicans essentially merge into one party. I have a lot of bad things to say about Hillary Clinton, not many good things to say about her. But do I think that she would ultimately rather have an opposition on her left than on her right? I do. And the reason is that I think that she thinks it'll be easier to pass legislation that way. She thinks it'll make her look better. Great. I don't think that's what's going to happen. It's a hard, long slog one way or another, and Trump is a historically bad candidate that could destroy his party's future. So I really think the left is better off taking the opportunity to try and get rid of the Republicans once and for all than pouting about the lack of options. This is an opportunity they have. They'll probably never have it again. Or at least not for a long time. To make a temporary alliance with the Democrats to wipe them down. Now I know, how many times have you heard this? Temporary alliance. This is a different situation because Trump is so bad. They've never been in a situation this bad. I really think there's a possibility here that you could see a Reagan-like sweep. In the end, Trump could win like 5 states. It's not a great tactic, like I say, but none of the tactics are good. And I do think that they're better off, that we're all better off. Not just the left, but everybody is better off. Okay? And just in doing everything they can, as bad as Clinton is, I'm not, this is not done with any, support for Clinton. I'm suggesting this purely in the long-term interests, of left-wing ideas. The historic opportunity to annihilate the American right, I don't think should be squandered. I think that should be jumped upon. And that everybody on the American left through the whole spectrum should be looking at the situation and saying, holy shit, we can actually take them out. The hard part comes after that, right? Or sorry, it's all hard, okay, but the most important part comes after that. The goal here is not to wipe the Republicans out for the sake of wiping the Republicans out. The goal is to wipe the Republicans out with the purpose of reconstructing the spectrum, right? And so this only makes sense if it's followed by immediate, like, hard pushing for a split in the Democratic Party, like within the day after inauguration. Okay, there has to be huge lobbying, huge pressure to try to break the Democrats apart before they even vote. Because we know that the way that the two-party system works in the United States is that once you have these bodies in place, they're very hard to modify, they're very hard to move, they're very hard to change. So if we can have this maneuvering, if we can accomplish this, let Clinton become, let Clinton turn the Democrats into the new conservative party. Let her do it. The Democrats aren't doing anything for the left. They're not doing anything for working people. They're not doing anything for minorities. Let her do it. Let her take the party to the right. Let her bring in all these Republican strategists. What that means is that the left gets to construct its own space. And so the tactic here of supporting the Democrats to abolish the Republicans is done with the intent of, in fact, moving the left out of the Democratic Party. What is the other option? You're going to vote for the Green Party and split the vote? Not that I'm blaming you or blaming them or, I'm blaming the circumstance. But you're not going to get anywhere doing that. Under most scenarios, or every scenario I've ever lived in, it's like either not voting or voting for the Greens. It's not a very powerful statement, but what else do you do? This is different. There's an opportunity here to destroy the Republican Party, and you should not squander that. You should take everything you have to do it. Every resource. Okay? From the center right to the far left. Should be standing in solidarity to push the Republican Party into its grave, give it a shovel, and tell it to start digging. Although, this is Donald Trump here. He's been digging for a while already. In fact, the process may be just informing Donald of his surroundings, right? So the best way to help the Greens this election is not to vote for them, okay, but to get the biggest Democratic Party majority possible, and then once that's in place, once the Republicans are pushed out, then get as many Democrats as you can to defect. Yeah, it's hard. All of the options are hard. This one's more likely. The entire spectrum, okay? From center right to far left. Go for the kill. Show no mercy, because they would show none to you. There's an article up here from Robert Reich where he reacts cynically to news that of a Clinton landslide. What's more interesting to me here is that Robert Reich claims that he's getting insider information from Democratic pollsters saying that their analysis that they are predicting an extreme landslide. When you hear it from Robert Reich, who has known Hillary Clinton by his own estimation for 50 years, um, you're getting information from the campaign, right? And from pretty close within it, right? When someone calls Robert Reich up, that's not a side staffer, right? These are the higher ups, right? And like I said, the more important part here is that he's kind of letting on that, okay, that yeah, the Clinton people think that they're very far ahead right now. But he's cynical about it. He's saying, you know, not much changes except that they get the Senate. I think it's still early, Bob. Put your cynicism aside for a bit. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't bring it back. If we get to November and it still looks like it's the same thing, then yeah. Right now it's early enough that a big enough sweep is possible. If the groups think that's in strong enough, like it did in '08, then that supermajority in the Senate is possible, and the House is possible. And I think the Mississippi Delta, possibly including Texas, is possible too. Like I say, I've been over this, I think that's the next place that falls. She could win Georgia, she could win Arizona, she could win North Carolina, South Carolina. Okay, the next part that starts falling, I think, is the Mississippi. It looks to me like she's probably going to win Missouri already, right? I mean, it's going to be close, but now I'm wearing my poli-sci hat right now. I don't have data. Okay, I'm not going to cherry pick a place on the graph and then create a regression analysis out of it, right? That would be stupid. What I'm doing is I'm looking at a situation from a poli-sci perspective, and I'm saying that this was what I think is going to happen. Which is, as valuable as my asshole, right? Sure. And I'm talking possibilities rather than certainties, but if these fluctuations you see on the graph spin out, I mean fluctuations like that, right? There is some possibility that the election could end up looking like that, right? That might be what November looks like, or what the rest of it looks like, right? With the election that day. But I think the long-term trend is pretty clear, right? It gets a little closer, but then the long-term trend is that it's not even close. Rather, when I see a graph like that, I'm not gonna cherry pick that little bit here and then do a regression analysis and suggest that should go forward. I'm gonna look at the bigger picture, okay? And I'm gonna say that what looks more likely to me is that these oscillations are gonna widen. And in the end, it's gonna look more like this. Or maybe, kind of, what's fluky are these little points here, right? That's the volatility. And if you're going to smooth it out, you're going to take them down. You're not going to pull them back in. The only way you get this idea that you want it to be tightening is if you're just cherry picking the data. But hey, if your model says that it should tighten, then you need to come up with disingenuous arguments to demonstrate the validity of your model. And then you're not operating on a scientific level. This is not empiricism anymore. You're not analyzing data. You're manipulating data to fit your model. There's the real graph, guys. And these guys use a lot of bad pools. In fact, that graph is going to be friendly to Trump. That graph actually underestimates the distance because they just include everything. If you take out the screwy polls, like the web modeling polls, the distance, like that bump wouldn't be there like that, right? Or at least it wouldn't be so high. I think it's pretty clear that that bump is an anomaly, right? So, I mean, like, you want to tell me there's a trend line? No. Like I said, you'd have to just, like, if you ignore the rest of the graph and you focus just on that little bit there, and then you do a regression analysis on it, yeah. Like I say, next year you'll have 1,000% of the vote. It'll just keep going forever, right? I'm not exaggerating, that's literally what it did. He took that little bit there, okay, he plotted a regression on it, found a line of best fit, and then said it's just going to keep going like that, completely ignoring all of that. It's preposterous. And if I were to guess, the noise that you want to take out is here, right? The noise that you want to take out is the ups. It's pretty clear that the longer term trend here is that there's a big distance, right? And so that's what you're going to see stabilize, is what you see here. And that's going to just open up. Once this noise here is smoothed out. But you can't do polling pre-convention. Because the world was just introduced, or the country was just introduced to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton at the respective conventions, right? There's also an article here over at Time that is suggesting that a big landslide would help heal the country. Okay, that's not quite the argument I'm making, but I agree. And just, I mean, obviously to clarify, when I talk about the Republicans being wiped out, I don't mean that literally, to wake up on the day after the election and there to be absolutely zero Republicans. But if the Democrats play this right, they could be pushed down into the 20s. Let's be realistic here. Donald Trump is running in the 30s, right? Often. He's fluctuating, That's a two-person matchup. There's going to be at least 3 major candidates in this election. And Trump is running under 40. Often closer to 35. Pushing Trump down to, the high 20s isn't that unrealistic, right? And I think they could do it if they can build up enough of a backlash. And then after the election, it just kind of, once the damage is done, and it kind of, once people start dying, it starts fading down into the teens, and, and then it's gone. They say that what they're saying is that a landslide would heal the country, let the Republicans, regroup and come back. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that the Republicans become a minor party, and the Democrats take over their place in the spectrum without going crazy like they did, and then another party comes up where the Democrats were previously. Because that's what Clinton wants. If the Democrats had another person in charge of the party right now, maybe not. But Clinton has been, for her entire career, trying to position the Democrats on the center right. She's bringing in Republican people. If you see a Clinton landslide, that's exactly what's going to happen. She's going to take over the whole space. But then the vacuum appears on the left, which is happening anyways. The spectrum is fucked up right now. There's nothing resembling a left. There's a lot of people in the left, but they're disenfranchised. The left is completely disenfranchised in the United States right now, and that needs to be corrected. This is probably the best way to do it. I'll double down on it. You want to challenge me on this? Let's go. Let's have this debate. But I mean, my argument is not a lesser of two evil argument. I think this is the best thing you can do for the spectrum to create a different party. I'll say it again. The best thing you can do for the Green Party right now in this election, in this specific election, is to give the Democrats the biggest majority that you can get. To elect as many Democrats as possible. To marginalize the Republicans as much as possible. And then break the Democrats apart right away. The day after the election, you have to start working to break them apart. There can be no grace period. But that's the best thing to do, in my calculations. Sorry, Greens, but I think that if you look at the situation carefully, and you think about it carefully, you'll probably agree that I'm right. Again, I'm not suggesting that you can have a revolution in a counter-revolutionary party. I'm suggesting that the best thing to do is to try to destroy that party. You can destroy both parties. I've used this example before with the collapse of the collapse of the Persian Empire, right? Persians and the Romans, they fought for centuries, millennia, okay? And eventually, technically speaking, the Romans won. They sacked, was it Ctesiphon at the time? The Persian capital has changed so many times. And in fact, it's been in Iraq half the time. But, I think it was the Sassanids at this point in time. But the Romans beat them, right? That was the end of the Persian Empire. They annexed Persia. We don't hear about this in the history books because it didn't last very long. And I mean, the Persians will never admit defeat, right? But the Roman army went into the Persian capital. They sat on the Persian throne. They had conquered them. But, a few years later, this huge force of Arabs came out of the desert and didn't just wipe the Romans out. And people talk about why was it so easy for the Arabs to conquer the Persians? Because they didn't conquer the Persians. They conquered, they were fighting a spot force of Romans that had been sent to occupy the country. And because they were so weak from all of this fighting with the Persians, the Arabs were able to take over half the Roman lands as well. And so the result of 1,000 years of fighting between the Romans and the Persians was that neither side won. They both lost. The Arabs won. 1,000-year war, and a third party comes in and takes over. That's what I'm talking about happening here. The Democrats may destroy the Republicans for a few years. But in the process, they're going to lose their left flank. And the party that comes in and takes over gets the spoils of the blue states. for the foreseeable future. And the Democrats get pushed back into the Deep South, back to old glory. Does that sound like a good idea to you? Great. Vote for the Democrats then. This is four-dimensional chess. Chess in space-time.